Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to the Global Current. I am Zanele Njapa.
And I am Jacob Abel.
Today in news, Filipino president requests that the United States not store weapons in the Philippines.
Saudi Arabian cabinet has approved an International Monetary Fund-backed tax, marking an end to the era of tax-free living.
And Kazakhstan to make amendments to its constitution.
An analysis, the international community's reaction to the United States travel ban.
And the future of the United States and United Kingdom's relationship under President Trump and Prime Minister May.
Then Daniel Kim brings us an interview with Thaha Sherwani, a student leader at Seton University who is vocally opposing President Trump's travel ban.
And now, a report by Yilin Du on the Philippines' request for the United States to stop storing its weapons on the island nation.
On Saturday, January 28, 2017, the Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte requested the United States to not store United States weapons in Philippines Defense Pact. According to Yahoo News, Duterte believed that the United States is risking Philippines' regional safety and stability by storing weapons in permanent armed depots built by the U.S. In recent years, Duterte wants to build a stronger, better relationship with China. If the United States stores weapons in the Philippines, the country would get involved if a war happened to erupt between the United States and China. According to the Seattle Times, because Duterte is trying to rebuild the relationship with China, he has repeatedly threatened to scale back military exercises with American troops and stop agreement that allows U.S. forces to visit. The United States has 3 areas where they want to station their armaments. One of the areas is located in the western Philippine province of Palawan, according to the Seattle Times, which is facing the South China Sea. According to the Yahoo News, President Duterte said during a news conference, "Provision of the Visiting Forces Agreement, there shall be no permanent faculties. A depot is by any other name a depot. It's a permanent structure to house arms." In the same news conference, he said, "I do not even know if there's a nuclear tip now that they are unloading." The agreement that President Duterte said in his statement is the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement in 2014. According to Yahoo News, the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement allows the expansion of rotational deployment of U.S. ships, aircraft, and troops at 5 bases in the Philippines, as well as the storage of equipment for humanitarian and maritime security operations. As the United States prepares to transfer weapons into the depot, however, Duterte said that he is considering review of the treaties between the United States and the Philippines. According to Yahoo News, he said in a news conference that he maybe will ultimately abrogate since it is an executive order. This is Morgan Mount reading for Yillian Du.
Up next is Ian Fauché, reports on Saudi Arabia's move to end tax-free living.
The Saudi Arabian cabinet has approved an International Monetary Fund-backed tax marking an end to the era of tax-free living. The 5% tax applies only to certain goods as decided during an agreement between the 6 member nations of the Gulf Cooperation Council last June. Prior to the tax approval, the Gulf region had supported its inhabitants with the promise of no taxes in addition to an extremely government-subsidized cost of living. Due to the drop in crude oil prices 3 years ago in 2014, however, the country has been forced to limit spending and seek a new source of capital. Saudi Arabia is currently both the largest exporter of oil and the largest economy in the entire Arabian Peninsula. To compensate for the growing deficit, the country has halted construction of buildings, reduced government employee salaries, and even enacted a wage freeze on civil servants. As of right now, the state of Saudi Arabia's budget deficit stands at a record $97 billion. While the kingdom is widening its investment variety and fortifying venues of profit not affiliated with the export of oil, there is no guarantee that their goal of budget balancing will be met by the target year of 2020. According to the Saudi press agency, the Saudi cabinet decided to approve the Unified Agreement for Value-Added Tax, a policy that will be enforced throughout the entire Gulf Cooperation Council. This bodes well for the state, as the IMF has recommended that Gulf states impose taxes to compensate for the continuously lowering crude oil prices, a trend that has significantly hindered regional growth. Some of the goods which the GCC countries have agreed to place taxes on include tobacco, soft drinks, and energy drinks this year. For the Global Current, this is Liam Scollins reading for Ian Fauché.
Next this morning, Santiago Losada brings us a report on the amendments to Kazakhstan's constitution.
On the 25th of January 2017, President Nursultan Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan announced in a speech that there would be new amendments to the constitution. The main mission of the changes would be to transfer some presidential powers to the parliament and the government. Although the changes themselves are not that significant, the simple fact that there are changes is important. According to Radio Free Europe Radio Liberty, Mr. Nazarbayev acknowledged his advanced age of 76 and referred to a post-Nazarbayev regime not too far in the distant future. His speech also focused on a third stage of Kazakhstan's development. This stage consists of 5 priorities that will bring economic growth above the world average and bring the country closer together in order to fulfill its goal of joining the top 30 most developed countries. The Euro Reporter states that the first stage of development was abandoning communism and creating a whole new system based on the principles of capitalism and the free market during the 1990s. The second stage involved implementing Strategy 2030 and creating the new capital of Astana. In order to complete the third stage, Kazakhstan must have an accelerated technological modernization in the economy. This will allow Kazakhstan to create new industries based on digital technologies. Nazarbayev's plan for this is to develop a Digital Kazakhstan program and create an international IT startup technological park. He also wants to seek new market sectors that will help Kazakhstan diversify its economy. His goal is for the agrarian sector to be another driver of the economy and for Kazakhstan to be known as the breadbasket of Eurasia. President Nazarbayev also instructed his government to create a strategic plan of development until 2025 called Kazakhstan's National Technological Initiative, which will focus on the third stage of development, says Astana Times. Part of the general effort of bringing Kazakhstan into the 20th century is for Kazakhstan to have more influence than it has in the past to attract companies and investors. With President Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, Kazakhstan may prove to be a pivotal nation. Kazakhstan took its 2-year seat on the United Nations Security Council earlier this month, and one of its goals is to tackle the threat of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Forbes says Kazakhstan wants to be known as more than an oil-rich country. With its resources, status as a founding member of the Eurasian Economic Union, seat on the UN Security Council, and the desire to diversify its economy, the only thing that it's missing is foreign cash. In order for this to happen, Kazakhstan's leaders hope to persuade the U.S. to tilt more towards Russia, which will in turn be beneficial to nearby countries like Kazakhstan. In a press conference, President Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan said,
Kazakhstan was developing rapidly and was among the 50 most successful countries. A radical change in technological structure in today's world requires a transition to a new model of economic growth. So my message to the people will be on the third modernization of Kazakhstan.
For the Global Current, this is Santiago Lozada.
Next up, Joseph Orico analyzes the international community's response to President Trump's travel ban.
On Friday, January 27th, during the first week of Donald Trump's presidency, an executive order set forth a ban on the immigration of individuals from the 7 select countries of Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, and Libya. This ban places complete hold on all travel from those selected countries for the next 90 days and bars immigration from those countries for the next 120. This executive order has sparked outrage not only within the United States, but across the international community as well. Iraq, being one of the first nations on the list, has responded with an eye-for-an-eye policy towards the ban, with the Iraqi parliament pushing to place a ban on United States citizens from entering the country of Iraq. Influential Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr published a statement on his Twitter account saying in Arabic, "When you enter a country with a complete freedom in Iraq and other countries while you prevent their entry into your country, that is a swagger and an arrogance," clearly stating his discontent with the current American policy. This, however, is a very concerning stance because of Iraq's status as a key ally in the fight against ISIS. Further, Iraq still houses roughly 6,000 United States troops. Iran, the next nation on the list, states the ban is a double standard for terrorism, questioning why nations such as Saudi Arabia isn't on the list as well. While Iranian officials may also consider placing a hold on American travel, Iran's foreign ministry has stated that the response will be fair and reasonable, noting that the people of the United States are not the government of the United States. Yemen has released a statement, according to the Yemen news agency, that trying to claim that the country of Yemen or its citizens as a possible source of terrorism is both illegitimate and illegal. Yemen also cited that the al-Qaeda-focused attack made by the United States earlier this week was a case of state-sponsored terrorism by the United States under the false clauses of fighting terrorism, NPR reports. It is evident that Yemen is also upset by the president's action, and it is possible that we may see further action in the future from this volatile country. Despite the statements from other nations, there has yet to be an official statement about the ban by the governments of Syria, Somalia, and Libya at the time of this report. The Sudanese government, however, has stated that the action of the Sudanese citizens in the United States does not reflect the actions of terrorism, and that the reputation of Sudanese people in the United States has been betrayed by this portrayal as a terroristic country made by the president's executive action. Sudan has done a great deal of work in the recent months to be recognized as a friendly nation, resulting in former President Barack Obama removing trade sanctions on the country. These nations are not the only ones to speak out against the executive order. The Guardian reports that German Chancellor Angela Merkel remarked that fighting terrorism on the global scale is not aided by generalizing groups of people as terrorists. However, Boris Johnson, the United Kingdom Secretary of Foreign Affairs, stated his opinion of Donald Trump in this short interview with The Telegraph here.
Let me begin by saying that this is not a UK policy, and this is not our policy, nor is it a measure that this government would consider. I've already made clear our anxiety about measures that discriminate on grounds of nationality in ways that are divisive and wrong. The immigration policy of the United States is, of course, a matter for the government of the United States, but on the face of it, this executive order has consequences for some British citizens.
Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, has also responded to the American immigration policy. The Prime Minister has stated that any immigrants turned away from the United States will happily be welcomed into the country of Canada. The Prime Minister also plans on speaking to President Trump on the matter and success of Canadian immigration policy. Many Trump supporters claim that ex-President of the United States Barack Obama had done the same exact thing, citing a previous 6-month ban on Iraqi immigrants. Even the leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party went on to criticize Obama in his scalding speech on February 1st.
I want to ask you, Mr. Verhofstadt, and all the others, with your faux outrage today, where were you when Obama in 2011 banned any Iraqi from going into the country for 6 months? Why do I hear no criticism in this chamber or from the Commission of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain and others who refuse to take a single, not one, refugee or displaced person from Syria? And how can it be that on Holocaust Day, last Friday, not a single one of you criticized the 16 countries in the world that ban Israeli Jews from even going to their country on holiday? What is this hypocrisy?
While it is true that former president did place a half-year ban on visas from the country of Iraq, this policy was linked to the arrest of 2 Iraqi immigrants in Kentucky who were plotting terrorist attacks in the United States and had been linked to attacks in Iraq earlier this year. This 6-month action, which was not a total ban, was used to review the vetting process, ironically, the stated goal of the Trump administration's current ban. This executive order has clearly been heard around the globe, inciting responses from a large list of nations condemning this action. Hopefully, this large-scale action will be addressed diplomatically and will not lead to higher conflict. While we can acknowledge that the American vetting process has its flaws, the outright banning of travel and immigration from war-torn countries is unnecessary and harmful to relations between America and these foreign nations. Further, this policy has also had a resounding negative effect on those seeking refuge from these countries. Supporting refugees and combating terrorism do not need to be contradictory goals. Instead, we should negotiate a policy that achieves these aims while doing the least harm. This is Joseph Rico reporting for the Global Current.
And now, Vincent Maresca examines the future of the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom.
On January 27, 2017, British Prime Minister Theresa May visited the United States to meet with the newly inaugurated U.S. President Donald Trump. In a joint news conference, the two discussed international issues ranging from trade to NATO. On trade, backing his pledge to pursue fair bilateral trade, the President Trump expressed his hope to form a U.S.-UK trade pact as soon as the UK formally withdraws from the European Union. Furthermore, Trump reaffirmed Brexit as a move that respected British sovereignty and its right to self-determination. May confirmed that Trump would be visiting the United Kingdom later in the year. After covering trade, the two leaders discussed security issues such as Russia and NATO. In the joint news conference, Theresa May was the first one to bring up the issue of NATO, questioning Trump's commitment to the 68-year-old alliance.
On defence and security cooperation, we're united in our recognition of NATO as the bulwark of our collective defence, and today we've reaffirmed our unshakable commitment to this alliance. Mr. President, I think you confirmed that you're 100% behind NATO.
On Russia, she supported the continuation of European Union-imposed sanctions against Russia until the implementation of the Minsk Agreement. Meanwhile, Trump was optimistic that he would have good relations with Russia, saying,
"As far as the sanctions, very early to be talking about that, but we look to have a great relationship with all countries, ideally. That won't necessarily happen. Unfortunately, probably won't happen with many countries, but if we can have, as we do with Prime Minister May and the relationship that we've all developed, and even in the short relationship that we've just developed just by being with each other. We're gonna have lunch, and we've really had some very interesting talks and very productive talks. But if we can have a great relationship with Russia and with China and with all countries, I'm all for that. That would be a tremendous asset. No guarantees, but if we can, that would be a positive, not a negative.
On the issues of NATO and Russia, May's statement is quite ambiguous. According to Russia Today, May used diplomatic language in her discussion with Trump and reporters. However, when she questioned Trump if he was 100% behind NATO, she was playing the role of a fact-checker and put Trump in the spot. In response, Trump nodded, which Professor George Jamueli termed as, quote, standard diplomatic operating procedure, unquote. Furthermore, May's support for EU sanctions against Russia implies that the UK will continue to follow the lead of the European Union, at least for now. Theresa May's use of diplomatic language during the press conference was an attempt at courting both globalism and Trump's populism. Her statements on NATO and Russia illustrate Prime Minister May's difficult balancing act. How does she institute a clear strategy to pursue Britain's national interests without interference from an international body, while simultaneously pursuing economic interactions with her neighbors? If we are to take a cue from May's news conference, her country wants to pursue a new chapter in British history, and one should regard it from a positive standpoint. It is still too early to determine what effects Brexit will have in the nature of European politics. However, shortly after the Brexit vote, SoftBank, a Japanese telecom company, invested $32 in ARM Holdings, a British superconductor company. Although Chairman Masayoshi Son did not connect the investment with the referendum vote, Philip Hammond, the finance minister, praised it as a resounding endorsement of the British economy, unquote. Therefore, despite the majority of state votes in Scotland and Northern Ireland, there is optimism that the British economy will prosper. In terms of maintaining the special relationship between the US and UK, May appeared to exhibit a cautious optimism. The development of this alliance should be closely monitored in light of the volatile international mood and the experimental actions of a new American administration. The combination of Brexit and Trump creates an uncertain path for Prime Minister May to tread in the coming months. This will be observed keenly. This is Vincent Maresca reporting for the Global Current.
Finally, this morning, Daniel Kim brings us an interview with Thaha Sherwani, a student leader at Seton University who is actively opposing President Trump's travel ban.
Hello, I'm Daniel Kim, reporting for Global Currents, and today I'm with Thaha, the Vice President of Arabic Speaking Club in Seton University, and we just came out from his recent event about Trump's refugee ban that was imposed a few days ago. Hello.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
All right. So today you brought a lot of good points about Trump's refugee policy ban, and I was just wondering, like, first of all, it's like, what do you make of it? It's like, with Trump's imposing this ban on Muslims and other refugees.
Thank you for having me on. And we decided, the Arabic Speaking Club and MSA, to hold a prayer vigil and to stand united in prayer and reflection about the recent refugee ban, and also about building the wall on the Mexican border. About the ban and the immigration ban, I believe that over time you'll probably will see that it's unconstitutional, because it's not permitting people from 7 countries who are majority Muslim. So that might be ruled by the courts over time, but we will see how that goes, because you never know with the new administration appointing a Supreme Court justice. You never know if it will get to the Supreme Court or what will happen about that.
All right. So the next question will be, so like, how far do you think, or how much further can the United States could push this some sort of a wall, or how much can it isolate itself from the rest of the world before something starts cracking?
Well, Daniel, it's kind of disheartening that we've seen President Trump's first executive orders were to take out the U.S. from TPP, and then they were to start building a wall, or start giving permission to build a wall, and then with the recent refugee ban and the immigration ban from 7 countries, including Iran, Iraq, and other countries, Yemen and others. So it just shows that we're going towards a more isolated society. I don't know how far it can go till it starts cracking. As a United States citizen who was born and raised here, I hope that our next paths will only be positive, and we don't be impacted negatively, because I want for everyone to succeed, and even this president, we want him to succeed, but the thing is that we want a united America and not a divided America or an isolated America. We want an America that includes everyone in society.
All right. So the third question in line is, how much in your view, is like, do you see any unforeseen consequence out of this? Do you see, it's like, what do you see out of this, the actions that Trump has been taking now?
Well, what has happened at home is that people have become united, standing up against him. You can turn on any television screen, any channel, and you would see that all around the world and all across the United States there have been protests, from the Women's March to this weekend at airports and at Battery Park, and even in California and throughout the United States. The protests have united America, I believe. The people that want change and who haven't voted for him, because as you remember, he didn't really win the popular vote, and he won by the Electoral College. And across the world, even in the United Kingdom, on Monday, January 30th, they had a hours-long debate about whether or not to invite Trump or disinvite him. And our allies, like Iraq, and our newly formed allies, Iran, they are thinking of banning U.S. citizens, and with Iran and the whole Iranian nuclear deal, it's just worrisome that we might be going backwards from the progress that we made under President Barack Obama.
In your line of thought, it's like, besides doing protests and sending letters to Congress and then to Washington, what other courses of actions do you think everyday citizens could take in addressing their concerns or their voice against Trump's actions?
Well, one thing you can do is you can except for calling your senators and House representatives, you can actually run for office. There are a lot of organizations like the Emily's List and newly formed Run for Something, which encourages all citizens to run for local, county, statewide, federal positions, and that to vote basically, because there's an election every year in your municipal or your city or your county, and then every 2 years for congressional. So 2018 is not that far away. And if you think about it, Congress only works for a year and then campaigns the other year to get elected again. So if we get the people that we want, if you're a Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, or whoever you want, if you go out and vote, that's what matters.
All right. And this next question addresses towards the minority, as the Trump's ban was towards Muslims minorities in several Muslim countries. It's like, how far do you think he'll take this this mindset to other minorities?
Well, for minorities, it's very discouraging at the moment because he's already isolated himself by saying such horrible remarks against people from citizens that are from Mexico, because he wants to build the wall. And then with Muslims, he might, even though right now it's 7 countries, you never know if he increases the number of countries, and some countries he might never think of because of his business interests, which is good. Like, it's discouraging and scary in a way that he'll only think about what's good for him and not for the country. What unites us but what divides us.
All right. And so, last question would be, what do you hope to see in America? It's like, as Trump continues on with his presidency.
For a more united, for citizens to become united, as they've shown the world that whatever action he takes, if it's unconstitutional or unjust, that they would take to the streets and demand their rights, and that's what's been going, and I hope it continues.
And do you have any last minute thoughts about Trump and any of his actions so far?
Well, I think from what we have seen is that his actions have kind of united a lot of people together, all the minority groups, the Asian community, the African American community, the Muslim community, all the different minorities have come together to stand up together and say that we won't take anything that's wrong and we'll stand up to what's right.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. This is Daniel Kim reporting for Global Current, and thank you again, Thaha, for taking your time to have this interview.
Thank you, Daniel.
All right.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Global Current. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm Zanele Njapa.
And I'm Jacob Abel.
Same time.
Same place.
Next week.
The Global Current is brought to you by the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University. Our executive producer is Liam Scollins. Our associate producer is Morgan Mount. Our news editor is John Trudeau. Our analysis editor is Marissa Hutton. And our technical producer is Trevor West. This week's interview was brought to you by Daniel Kim. Special thank you to Seton Hall's Arabic Language Club. The Global Current theme song is Acid Jazz by Kevin MacLeod. You've been listening to The Global Current on WSOU 89.5 FM, Seton Hall's Pirate Radio.